Wonderful. Well, it's really great to be here and see some people that I haven't seen for a while. It's great to see your faces. And I am Tremain Smith. I'm a visual artist. I live in Philadelphia and a member of Art Street, though I haven't been there in person for a long, long time. And I'm really glad that we're going to have this discussion, that you're going to join me in a discussion about art and healing, because that is really what I believe that my work is about and what I hope my work is about for myself. So during the Zoom meeting, I'm going to show examples of my artwork that reflect the long-time practice that I have of using painting as a means for my own personal healing. And I'd also like for us to have a discussion, maybe when I finish the presentation, or during and in between, however you guys want to work this. I can be very fluid, about how we could use art for collective healing, asking the question about how art can bring change at this time. I don't have an answer. I would love to open it up and talk about that after I show you how I've used art for my own personal healing throughout my lifetime. So you're going to see my responses visually to life events such as birth, growth, trauma, death and loss and grief, divorce, injury, accident, injury, love, all the things, spirituality, all in the context of healing, all the things that we go through in life. I use art to help as a way for me to process and to have insight into my own life and my own state of being. So I'm going to read just a synopsis of what I'm about as an artist, so you have a short description to start off, and then I'll start to show you the images as we move along. As a visual artist, I use my skills as a painter and writer to facilitate healing, both personal and communal. I paint intuitively, exploring inner landscapes. My abstract paintings are inspired by spiritual exploration. I write poetry that stands alone or in direct response to a painting, and as a conversation that occurs in verse while a painting unfolds. My aspiration: I am a soul artist. I see into my own being. I have a source inside me. I make what's blocked start moving again. I am a warrior of concentrated light. So I'm going to be sharing both images and poetry, so that you can see I sort of have this two-step way of using art as a means to healing. Wait a minute. Okay, got it. So these first three images are, of course, of wounds. They're each called Wound, and these are very early in my career. When I first started to paint, I really started to paint to try and address wounds within myself, and these are quite visceral, as you can see. And this is also from 1993, one of my first, what I called inner landscape. And what I'm trying to show you here is how once I go into the inner landscape and I paint without knowing what I'm doing, what comes across is often a combination of both structure and chaos. There's a looseness and a structure, oftentimes, is what emerges. I started out painting as a way to address childhood trauma. And I did a series of paintings called Homage to a Young Child. This is a couple of those pieces from that series. They're very early pieces. One day I hope to have a whole show about this particular type of trauma, which so many people have experienced in childhood. But these are pieces that I cherish and will keep, because they show me a part of my life that I really needed to heal. And this is an early canvas, one of the first I painted when I started painting again. I had left painting for about 12 years, and I returned to it in the early 90s. And this is a painting about the wounds in America, the wounds that we all know between each other, rich and poor, black and white, gay, straight, male, female, coming from a belief that revealing the wound can allow for healing. And this piece was in an exhibit about racism here in Philadelphia, way back in 1997. And during that time, I wrote that quote below, that racism is a deep, deep wound in our society. Sorry, the screen is blocking it, but now I can see. One which each time it is uncovered bleeds anew. To address this wound is to address the pain and let it come out with the rage and sorrow. To attempt to heal this wound is to go to spiritual depths with great courage and conviction, and with faith in divine justice and goodwill, and in the sacred space in each of us. And I will revisit, as we move on in my career, revisit this theme later in the more recent times that we're living through now. A larger piece called "Don't Speak of the Wound." I think that's one of the root of the problems that prohibits healing, is when we don't speak of our wounds, both those that we experience and those that we perpetrate. So I was definitely wrestling with that early in my career, because I think I spent a long time not speaking of my wounds, but the art was a way for me to speak. And this is just a piece during that time, just confirming where I come from. I believe in the soul. I did several paintings called "I Believe in the Soul." And then this is from 1996, Birth Revealed. By this point, I had given birth to 2 daughters, and I was pregnant with my son. And I really loved this. I did a bunch of pieces around birth. I love this piece. I love the mystery of it. The cocoon and the unfolding, the mystery of birth being revealed. In the piece, you can see there's seed pods, there's stitching. I used a lot of objects in my art early on that I would adhere to the work and made it somewhat 3-dimensional. And then this piece is, again, when I was pregnant with my son, Gus. Some of you may know him. He went to Friend Select he's now here in Philly. He's a clinical social worker. He works as a mental health worker for Jefferson now. But this is a piece I wrote. He now has it in his apartment. And it shows that I started the writing very early in my work. Here's the back of the piece where I wrote, "Tautly tied, I'm not sure I want to come out. The whiteness of my ancestors' bones holds me. I'm sewn together. A tiny hand brings tears, each one precious. Hold me tight, for I love you. The silence before birth, pregnant with possibilities. Color, movement, knowledge, just under the surface. When I'm ready, I'll open the package." And then I did a series about the environment that life needs in order to grow. This is called Gentle Life. Obviously, what we all need and what especially young life needs is gentleness and a supportive environment. This was a pivotal piece for me because I really was finding that I was painting these objects that felt like cocoons or that needed to be unwrapped, and it felt like they were spirits that I wanted to understand and explore in my painting, but I didn't know what or who they were or what forces they represented. So this is called "What Spirit Are You?" When all are summoned and hear the call and gather, what will you speak in your silence? How will you help us? What wound do you carry that you need us to heal? What journey can bring you completion? What spirit are you? Reading that poem, there's more to it. I only took a clip of it. It reminded me of what happens in Quaker meeting when we sit in silence, open to what is going to be revealed. During the same period, this is from 1998, Window of Insight. Always I'm looking for insight through painting. And the writing that comes with that is look in softly, seat yourself, take a look, Touch each seed gently with care. Feel the power of life inside. See into the mystery. Glimpse the other side. No thing is hidden. See into the heart of all things. Now open the scroll, see your soul lines dance and move, pulsing, living rhythms in sync with your heartbeat. You are alive. Your soul line dance. In 1999, my grandmother passed, and I did a series of works called Topography of Memory about death and memory. As I helped clear out her apartment, I found photographs, old photographs. I'm sure you've seen them, that they're in an oval form. And that inspired this oval shape that came to be very important to me. And I used it for years afterwards as a template. And these are a couple examples of what I painted right after she passed. Nature's place, you see the oval again being used. My work is made with beeswax as well as with oil paint and often collage, and it has a lot of layers and sometimes is somewhat gritty. And so you'll see that as we move through the work. I carve into the wax with sharp utensils and rub oil paint in it to get the effects that you see on the surface. Two pieces from that time, just to give you a sense. This one's called Spirit Call and Present, to give you a sense of how I was influenced by organic forms, nature-based, inspired by nature, often, looking like seed pods or leaves, those types of forms, shells, the outline of shells, very prominent in my work. And these are the healing elements of nature: earth, water, fire, and air. They're in everything. They're in us. The very important four elements that make up everything. You can think of earth as our body, and water our feelings, fire as our spirit, and air as our mind. This is one of my favorite pieces. I have it now on my kitchen wall, and I'm going to keep this piece. It was also one of Ishimu's favorite. I know many of you knew Ishimu, who passed on in 2020, but when I see it, it reminds me of him as well. And then came, can you guys see, or can you see all four pieces in this, or am I in the way? You can, okay. So these are a series from 9/11. And I, like so many people, and many artists, were just completely stopped by that event and didn't paint for quite a while. But I did go into my studio and did a series, not realizing until I came back that I had made towers. I didn't even know that I had made towers until afterwards, which really, I have such respect for the subconscious, because that's really what I'm working with when I paint. Whatever comes from within, sometimes I'm not even conscious of it. And that really showed me how the subconscious works, even when I'm unaware, that I painted these four pieces that I recognized as having towers in them afterwards. Another piece from that series called In Memoriam. And I wrote this poem. We remember when the blast came, I was quiet. But then the red hot fire began to drip, leaving skeletal structures too hot to touch, suspended in air. Spirits began to rise as bodies fell. We remember that day, that hour, that minute, those spirits whose bones became ash and floated on air. So I'm showing you how in every event that I experienced in life, I used art as a way for me to process the event. From personal events to large-scale world events. The white glaze that's dripping down in this piece, I use that often in my work as it felt to me like a healing element, this dripping white glaze that I often kind of call the milk of God. It felt like grace to me. So I wanted to show you a piece that happened. I did a lot of white glazes like this. This one is specifically shows you the dripping of it, and it feels very much like God's grace. And then as I moved on with the panels that I was painting with beeswax, I really worked with layers, and the pieces felt like excavation, going within and excavating what was within, almost like going down into the earth. That one's called stratum. And then also this piece, Layers of My Ancestors, is almost like a mapping, almost of the earth, a spiritual mapping of a type. And that's what many of my larger panels during this time represented for me. Another example, temple, going in, going deep. And for me, it's always about the way in. And there's many ways in, obviously, but for me, it has a lot to do with going in and going deep and going into the earth even. This is underwater access, and this is the way in. Both of them are examples of me trying to find a way in, and they feel like mappings as well to me. The earth obviously is very much prevalent in my work and a very sacred place of healing. The receptive, where we all want to be spiritually, where I want to be in life and as an artist. This one's called Look Deep, Sister. It's again, the search is within and the answers are within. It's about going in and going deep. To the other world. This is one of my favorite pieces of mine. I don't have it anymore, but it's almost as though there was a portal between worlds in this piece. 2006 was when my father was diagnosed with cancer, and I was moved in with him and my mother in his dying process. And so these pieces were actually painted in his garage. I set up a little studio during that process. The kindness of fire and love. He died very beautifully and courageously and left me an example of a beautiful way to go. So I appreciated the paintings I had, remembering how he really faced that process so gracefully. Another painting from that time, Mercy. There's a calmness here that I really appreciate. And then Soul's Patterns. This is a piece that's about these passageways, doorways, connections. It's a metaphor for what's within. Now I'm in the process of divorce. So this is called The Wound That Proves You. Very difficult, painful time for me, for my kids, for our family. And again, it's me processing what I was going through at the time. And then the rebuilding that comes afterward. This is a this is one of the largest pieces that I painted. It's 48 by 80. And I still have this piece. I don't have much place to put it. It's stored up against the wall right now, but there's a sense of rebuilding here and the time it takes to rebuild after something has dissolved. And then in 2010, I called a new way in because for the first time, I started using diagonal line, a very different energy. And there's diamonds and hexagons and triangles. All of that has a very different energy from the straight up and down of horizontal, vertical that my grid that I was using as a grid up until now. So there's more movement here. There's definitely a new energy to this time for me. So in 2012, I actually participated in the spiritual formation program with the Quakers, with Hashimo. It was a really wonderful program. I don't know if any of you guys have done it or if the Quakers still do that. spiritual formation program, but this was a painting that I painted as a result of engaging in that period of study with other Quakers. Yet another way in. This shape, which you just saw then, has become important to me, almost like a way to be transported. And you see the sort of hard-edged geometric. This is the phase when I was doing that geometric form, and this one you see the movement of it cross easily this sea. And then this is the final painting that I made before my mother died, and everything changed for me, including my work, which you'll now see. This is called As It Is. And then in 2015, late 2015, my mother died after an illness in which I moved in with her and stayed with her in her home for about a year. And right afterwards, I did a series of paintings called grief paintings. I just did them one after another as a way to move my energy, not to make art at all, but really as a way to address my energy and try to move it. I had a friend say, the only way you're going to go through this is to move with the energy of grief. And I really heard her. And I wrote this poem that helps me in terms of grief, called The River of Grief. Some things change you permanently, and there's not a thing you can do about it. Not a thing. You just are changed. No choosing, no choice. Just the holy river crashing in its riverbed, rounding a turn, slowing down, moving, 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 and you move with it. No choosing. It just does. You just do what it does, because it has control. It is your God, the one whose mercy you live in, the one whose grace you count on, as it tumbles, crashes, flows, and moves. Grief painting number 2. Today I asked the question, what do I need now to continue to facing the task of accepting Mom's absence, of accepting the journey that leaves me without her body, her voice, her presence, her laughter, her eyes, her hands. The answer I received, a golden cup, a golden goblet. It holds the wine of love. It holds the wine of communion. It holds the spirit of life. It celebrates, it honors, it rejoices. It is sacred, holy, blessed. Raise a toast, take communion, drink the wine of the beloved. Cherish, honor, protect the sacredness of love. Love. Smile, laugh, enjoy. Joy and delight. Live fully. I know my mom was happy in spirit when I wrote that. Because I know that all of us have experienced grief, and it can be a fierce journey. Grief painting number 12. Bam, a huge train hit me sideways full force. I was derailed completely. A personal tsunami has taken me under to the bottom of the ocean where it came from. And now I lie at the bottom of the ocean looking up and wondering, do I want to go back up there? Can I? And how? What effort will it take to move my body from the ocean floor and reach the air necessary to live on the earth? Maybe it's just a decision to let my body float to the surface and breathe. I remember someone saying to me shortly after, in the rawness of new grief, that my only job was to breathe. And this is the last of the grief paintings. I did. There were about 30 of them. And maybe one day I will make them into a book with the art and the writing next to each other. That's a thought that I have. This is the last one I'm going to show in this presentation. Do I need to say goodbye to you, Mom? Not really, Tremain. I'm right here. but if it will help you, perhaps a ritual. Take something of mine or something I gave you. I'll guide you to it and place it somewhere special. Light a candle and say goodbye to my physical presence in your life. Then take it to the river, Tremain, and give it to her. Make an offering to our love. Do it again if you need to. Do it every day if you need to. A ritual, an offering, a journey to the river, until you know my body is gone and my spirit is present. Trust and faith, beautiful woman, my daughter. And I did that. I took offering to the Schuylkill River for a while. And it did help. And then in 2017, I had a bike accident. And I shattered my painting arm. And I made these paintings at the foot of my bed with my left hand while I was recovering. And it was definitely my way through traumatic injury. I called it the Elbow Chronicles. And I got a few of them. I had about 30 pieces that I painted and wrote. It really did help a lot to get through this period. This one was, that's an image of how my arm felt right after the accident, just like jello. It was just hanging down. I am curious as to why it happened, the exact timing of a woman coming home from work, of two women coming home from work. One opens her car door after parking in front of her home. The other woman coming down the street at that exact moment smashes, is broken instantly. She is broken instantly. In a matter of seconds, all has changed for her. Her bicycle tangled between her legs, her arms limp. Elbow Oracle number 8. I sit wounded within and without, from the skin to the flesh underneath, the muscles, the nerves, the arteries, down to the bone, the healing bone. It is being knit back together again. I also am being knit. I am wounded. I am a wounded artist. I am the bone inside the flesh healing. I am healing itself. I heal for all bones, inside all flesh. The flesh that covers us all, the flesh that covers us is all that we can see. Yet underneath is where healing is happening. It seems dense, thick, hard, immovable. Obstacles erected and re-erected. In my good moments, I can see through. Let's give each other good moments. Enough good moments that the thickness begins to soften, like the flesh of a woman when the time has come to deliver all she holds within. We all came from that place that opens beyond what appears possible. That is where we must now return, so that the healing goes past the surface skin and down to the bone. Otherwise, we are wasting our time. And this one, I wrote because during my recovery, Hishima was the one who took care of me, and he was such a help to me that I wrote, this is a portion of the poem. This man sharing the house with me has opened up his true heart, showed me who he really is. My suffering arm lies heavy and limp at my side. He remains present. What a priest of love. What a carrier of human gifts, given to me who lies wounded and healing in this process of hurt body in time and space. I find discouragement lies like flippers on the floor. I put my feet in them and all looks gray. Find my way down this river called accident, float in the river called healing. Profoundly grateful that I have someone willing to travel next to me, with the reach of his strong hand offering assistance when I tilt and lean too far in the direction of darkness. He helps show me the light that never left. I just close my eyes. That's all. And then finally, the healing. This is actually, with these elbow oracles, they're a little more obvious than many of my paintings, not quite as abstract. Definitely my elbow with light pouring in. I will get my energy back. It will come. I peer out and see the light within and the light without are no different. Energy will seep back into my bones. Healing can be slow. The wound is where light enters you. Nothing but love surrounds me. That presence is all I need to shine like the sun and the moon, to leave a trail of light as I move slowly from one room to another. That light seeps into my arm, infiltrating the tissues, entering the bone, going down to the deepest cells. It begins to emanate from my fingertips as I flex and bend, as movement returns, like the rising of the sun. I'm thinking I might like to show all of these pieces with the poetry at a rehab center somewhere. When people, because it is hard work, as I'm sure some of you have gone through to heal from a traumatic injury. And as we move on, we're in 2018 now. I did a artist retreat by myself in total solitude and silence, and it was a very dark time for me. But as always, when I looked back at what I did during the time, even in the darkness, there was beauty that I had created from within. And this, you can see the chaos of going in, and I called it Tunnel Down. Through the tangle, though I've tried to organize it, it bursts from the straight lines I draw to bring order. It hangs over like neglected vines. I'm drawing a line right here, I say, and here. I don't care, gleefully my insides smile. It makes no difference. Just go into the thicket and tunnel down. See what messages are there. Get lost in the mist, going in and out. See beauty in the whole mess. That's enough. So during this retreat, which was very difficult, I did a bunch of paintings that I called Book of Wounds. And here's one, Book of Wounds number 2. This one is raw, open healing. I'm a painter of wounds. Revealing the wound invites healing. Unfinished wounds, completely finished wounds, wounds in process, old wounds, fresh wounds, wounds yet to come, hidden wounds, wounds in plain view. I'm a painter of wounds. I'm a healer of wounds. Large to small, minor to major. We heal from them or we die from them. We are changed by them. I am a painter of wounds. Look deeper and see the roots, the web, the tangle, the thicket, the underbrush, bushwhack, tunnel down, get underground. What is this pain really? Here's the window. Go in. The window in. In the painting that followed, I actually did go into that window. It was a very dark painting. But I wrote something that really helped me, that I put in italicized here. Whoops. It is in the perception that I am healed or further damaged or liberated entirely. Painting is such a dive in and take my chances act for me. Just throw myself in with no idea the mess that might result. Yeah, that's truly what my process is. Just to go right on in and see what happens and see what's discovered. And this is the final one from that series that I'm showing tonight. It's called Even Darkness Flows. There is a ladder climate. It flows loose but feels tight, bound. Yet remember, child of darkness, you are also a child of light. And it does flow loose. It only appears tight. Go through appearance. Even this is beautiful. When I painted this, I thought it was the worst piece of nothing, but actually there's beauty in it. And now we move into the pandemic. So these are a few paintings during that time. I called it Bardo 2020. Bardo is a Tibetan word for the in-between, the liminal space. Can you guys still hear me? We okay? Okay. So this is a harder piece of that really raw time that I'm sure we all remember when we were so isolated. And I know that some of you did know my partner Shimu. He died in January 2020, and we were shut down obviously in March. So I spent a lot of time right after his passing, very much alone, in my home, in my studio. So I felt like I was with the spirits. The energy silences my soul. I find no voice. I hear no voice. I hear the deepest emptiness. I feel it pervade everything. It is thick, heavy, oppressive, tightening. Let me find a bit of light. I know it could blind me if I just open my eyes. A smile, a squeeze of a hand for one dying alone. A profound kindness in the loss. I feel the call of the dead and the dying, sedated, intubated, alone, unable to breathe, the exhaustion and trauma of the doctors and nurses, the fear in us all, the loss. I'm going to hold it right now in my arms, in my heart, in my belly. I feel it. I am here. I am in Philadelphia. I am in the world. My arms are wide. My heart is big. It's open and it hurts. It's open and it's tender. It's open and it's strong. It's beating out love. My heart is beating out love. This is around the same time, but it's a little more about trying to find the safety in the time. I call it spirit liberation. My beating heart echoes hers. She is sacred, this one. Her heart is golden flowers and honey, soft and fierce her power. And she holds the answer I seek in her outline. All I need is her outline. Imagine only the outline, and I am safe. And then this is moving into 2021. It's that it's separation. It shows us all in our own little boxes by ourselves during the pandemic. You know, kind of a painful piece where we just were so isolated. And then I'm moving into 2022, where we really are beginning to face some of the hard history that we've ignored for so long in America about race and its profound impact in our history. And so I started to look into my own ancestry, my family's, and to try to dig out the truth that was unspoken there. And I did a series of pieces. I'm showing you a couple of them from that time. This one is called Truncated and Whitewashed. Look at it if you can, truncated and twisted up, inside seen for what it is, outside whitewashed. Yeah, because truly I think we are truncated unless we can truly face the history that we've been unable to look deeply at. Will remain truncated. This one's True Surrender. It's another piece about me looking into my own legacy of harm through my ancestors in terms of being white in America. And what I found out with my siblings as we did the research was that our ancestors in Harford County, Maryland, on the border of Maryland and Pennsylvania, enslaved people in the 17 and 1800s. So we are now working on the process of reparations for that. But I did this piece as part of our process, as me processing that. It's called Living and Shapeless. What is the right medicine to heal the legacy of deepest harm? To be as open and transparent as the sun piercing a prism. To be as fluid and malleable, vulnerable as liquid wax melting. To place the ego on the cliff of truth and leap. Bear the shattering below. Resurrect your humanity that is laying dusty in the back of the closet no one opens. Tend to it truthfully, honestly, wiping away the clotted cobwebs of deeply buried delusion. Bring it out, wipe it off, the rag like a truth bearer restoring its existence in the land of the living. Hold it in the hands. Feel it. Feel. Put it where you sit every morning. Merge with it as you sleep every night. This legacy of deepest harm becomes an object you understand deeply enough to offer to the consuming fire. The ashes on your fingers, in your eyes. You taste them on your tongue. The chalky grit covers the ground you walk on. And you are naked in the searchlight of truth. This is love. And finally, we're back to healing. This is my last piece that I wanted to show you. And I'll just end with it. We call it healing. It's just bold exposure to what might be amiss when we enter the deep caves in our body and see the light. So thank you for listening and looking at all of that. And I can stop sharing my screen and we can have a discussion. Let me see. Stop here. There we go. I'd like to just welcome you to respond in any way you would like, and also to see if there's any discussion we'd want to have to see what people would think about how art can be used. That was also very personal, obviously, about my life and my journey. Some parts of the journey we've all collectively experienced, like the pandemic. It was my interpretation of my experience during that time. But how art can be used as an agent of change or for collective healing. That's something I've always struggled with, and I don't have an answer. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, any thoughts that people have in response to what I showed you and to that question.
So, Tremain, this is Carol, and it seems to me that because of your training in art, part of the process of healing was accomplished through making art, and it's a different experience if you're just looking at art and maybe looking at your poems, reading your poems at the same time, but it's a different kind of experience. And I guess healing is there possibly for those who aren't making the art.
That's a really wonderful point. It's very different to be the one making the art and in the process of making. And I think for some people, making art is healing. Obviously for artists, for visual artists, it is. For musicians, their music is healing. For poets, for dancers. But there also, hopefully, is some healing that can be shared with the viewer or the experiencer of the art itself. So hopefully there's an exchange that occurs. Not always, and of course it's very subjective. So it's a wonderful point, because I think that I have seen art that others have made that have moved me very deeply and touched me in a way that stays with me. So in that way, I think art can also maybe ask questions and interrogate things that it's hard to do in other ways. Art can be a form that can open us to some questions that might be hard to address in other ways. It's a different language.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I wanted to thank you for making yourself vulnerable, because when you explain where the art came from, you add so many layers that didn't exist until you talked about it.
Thank you. Yeah. I think as an artist, I have to be open, really open, or I can't work. And that was a reason I left art for 12 years. I wasn't willing to be open like that. So it always is a risk to go to those places, but it usually always brings a gift.
Thank you very much for revealing yourself to us.
It's good to see you, Ray.
I thought that your poetry was just marvelous side by side with your paintings. And what I experienced, what you've shown us is very deep. It's very deep, and it's timely now. We've already had many experiences, including the 9/11 and, as you said, the pandemic. And what's going on in the world right now. And I think in terms of art and faith, that's how it's been in my life, used art and faith and psychology, all of that, to get to know ourselves, to get to know ourselves better. And the experience that I've had myself in this world has been in having children, working with children in art in places like Chester. And art gets to, through art, you're able to get to the heart of the matter, because it opens itself, and it's very helpful. So you called all that to mind through your whole presentation. It was lovely, really lovely, and very, very rich. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Your comments reminded me of two things. One is that I do go very deep, and it can be too intense for some people. And my son said to me, "Mom, not everybody lives where you live." I said, "I know, I get it." But I said, not everybody does. But you know what? Most artists do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's part of my job, and the other piece is that my middle daughter is an art teacher in the Philly School District. She teaches at a wonderful elementary school in North Philly. And her whole goal is to be able to allow her students to express themselves through art, because many of them, we all have, but many of them have experienced real trauma at a very young age, that they, things you don't want a child to have to experience, which all of our children are these days, especially with the shootings going on right in the neighborhoods where the schools are, on the streets where the schools are. And so the art is a way for them to express those feelings. She speaks a lot about social emotional learning, and art being a way that they can learn to express the feelings that they can't express otherwise.
Right.
I found your art just wonderful, and it struck me as not something that just somebody would go in and sort of lose yourself in this creation without some deep talent and training in art. And I'm just wondering because I don't know you, what your artistic background is.
Sure. Yeah. I've been an artist all my life. Even since I was a young child, my mother saw it and got me into classes, as a child, Saturday morning classes after school. And then I did go to art school. I went to Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh to study art, but I left there. That's when I decided I was very idealistic, and I didn't think art was enough of I wanted to change the world, and I didn't think art was good enough to do that. I struggled with that question my whole career. So I left art, but then I returned to it when I was pregnant with my first child. And so at that point, I took classes here in Philadelphia at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts and at Tyler School of Art and at community college, where I got really great training in painting, actually, at CCP. And then I just went into my studio and started painting. And I have made a living as an artist for the last a little over 20, since the slides that I showed you, since 1993, 94. And I do believe that discipline, learning the elements of art, learning really learning how to manipulate the language of visual art. Like, I mean, it has a language like anything else has a language, is really important. It's like you have to learn the dance steps before you can just dance freely and interpretively, So I believe a grounding in artistic discipline can allow for full freedom, but I needed to get the grounding first, and I loved getting the grounding. Actually, I could paint very realistically. As a matter of fact, my sister, when she had some of my paintings on her wall, and one's a very detailed painting of a figure, and then there's a very abstract piece. And sometimes she'll say, well, my sister did that, pointing to the abstract piece. And then she says, but she can do that. So I'm aware sometimes that abstraction is not as accessible to everyone. It's a different language. I believe it's like music without words. To me, there's a lot of freedom in just the language of line and shape and color and texture.
Well, I think there are a lot of people who are not educated in art find it something that they say, oh, my 3-year-old could do that. But, and your work basically produces, I don't know how to express it, but something that, no, I'm sorry, a 3-year-old can't do that. Somebody with very special talent has to do things like that. So thank you. It's really wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Tremain, can you hearing me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I just want to thank you so much. As someone who's struggling now to kind of learn how to mourn a loss, and you really, I don't know, I can't speak to the art because I'm not trained in art, but I can tell you the way you take your talent and your beautiful art and express it is very meaningful to somebody who's listening to you. And the combination is wonderful. And I really thank you for your presentation, which was really, really nice and helpful. And I just sort of feel I can, you were there. You were feeling my loss, and and it was lovely.
Well, Jane, I was actually thinking of you with some of those poems and hoping it wasn't too raw for you. Yeah, because I know that it's very new. So I'm glad.
No, it isn't. It was just the right thing at the right moment from the right person. And boy, am I glad I decided to zoom in. Thank you.
Tremain, you had mentioned that you were thinking of creating a book out of one series. I think that it had to do with grief. I can't remember, but I would encourage you to do that.
Thank you. I'm definitely at that point in my life where I'm trying to decide what form my offering should take. Yeah, so I'm going to look into that. And I think, when I was in my rawest grief, I think I would want a book like that would have helped me. And so that was the one I initially thought, the idea of the art of grief, and then what follows, love, undying love that follows.
And joy. I mean, you can bring in something.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I
for that encouragement. I'm gonna keep moving forward and figuring that out. Yeah.
I thought your take on grief was, especially when your mother died. When my mother died, I went out because I was here and my mother was in Australia. When I heard that my mother had died, I went out and I bought a bread machine, and I made bread every day for the next 6 months. So I'm thinking, yeah. I mean, everyone handles grief differently, but I thought that was very interesting. Yes. Thank you. Yeah.
Am I muted?
Oh, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Hey, David.
It was great to see your work again, and your paintings and your words were just really deeply moving, and it's a wonderful experience to be here tonight to see this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, what are you doing now? I mean, that the last painting was over a year ago, and you're
Yes.
doing something, right?
I'll tell you what I'm doing now. I have been working on archiving all of my work from my whole career, because I have been very impacted by death, and Shimo died suddenly. He died very suddenly, and that was my partner, and he didn't have his really important work in any form that they want to archive it. He was a very powerful voice, a very powerful journalist, and people want to archive his work, and it's not in a state where that can happen. And that has had a huge impact on me. So I have spent the time making sure that all my work is in the form that I want it to be in, so that I can be free just to move on to whatever's next. But that takes a lot of time and a lot of energy. And I, of course, have been painting. I've had work from 30 years. Now I know some artists who used to share a gap. I used to be with Rosenfeld, and some of those artists are much older now. Older than me, even in their 70s. I'm in my 60s, and we all have lots of inventory from decades of painting. Mm-hmm. So the question we ask is, well, what do we do with that responsibly? And I do not want to leave my children with hundreds of pieces of artwork to deal with. So I'm coming up with a 5-year plan of how I'm going to move the work out. That's in my studio from all periods of life that didn't sell up until now. And some of it I'm going to work on selling. Some of it I'm going to try to do fundraisers for organizations that I want to support. So I have an event in which my artwork will be the attraction, and the money that will go to organizations. There's a wonderful school here in Philly that needs money right now. That they're the first people I'm going to do that with. But if anybody has ideas like that, that is what I'm going to work on next, is how to move out some of this work. And I think that the process of archiving that is really going to free me for what comes next. So I can't answer your question. I have not painted in 2023. I have been archiving. So I have a brand new website that was just up on Friday. And everything feels like I can move forward now. And I feel really good about that. Yeah.
How do we get to your website? It's what?
It's TremainSmith.com.
Oh, that's easy.
Yeah, it's just my name.com. Yep.
Okay.
And there's a wonderful video on there, Jane, you might really appreciate it. On the exhibit, a filmmaker came and did a short film. It's about 15 minutes long, a little under 15 minutes, on the exhibit I had in 2019 called The Art of Grief and What Follows. And it follows my 3-year process in writing and images. And that's on the website too.
Oh, good, good. I shall definitely check it out.
Well, I think we did it, right, Lois?
Absolutely. Unless there are any final questions or comments from anyone else,
Maybe
I think you've done a lovely job.
Just a big thank you.
Yeah, thank you both you and Lois. I think you have.